Welcome back everyone to JFace Games. Today we are going to be talking about monster creation, and it's going to be a quick video. We've already talked about the details of monster creation, but I'd like to get your opinions on where I think I'm going with it as well. What I mean by that is that I want to be able to make a lot of tables so that someone can... So first off, we'd have a monster manual where you've got a lot of pre-created monsters, so you can just pick through there. They'd be based on tiers, and you can pick through and you can be like, oh, I want to play with this monster. I'm going to do an orc. I want to do this, whatever. Your standard sort of monsters. But I'd also like to have in that monsters manual a series of tables that allow you to quickly roll up a monster, right? Or create a monster off the fly. And so that's where this has been going. I have been trying to figure out how that might look, right? So once again, I've been having to go through this DC type creation, and I'll leave a link to this somewhere, but this DC type creation, based on now we have a lot of different ways we can create dice rolls. We have standard D4, D4 plus 1, D4 plus 2. This is technically advantage D4, and then so on for the D6s, D8s, D10s, and then D12s actually. And based on that, I've kind of paired that up with the concept of cipher system, where they have a DC system with these different sort of words associated with them, because I think they're nice and descriptive to help you. And I think that this matches nicely with here. Not 100%, but I think it matches nicely, giving you an idea of how would this word pair up with different dice, right? Now, I don't know what I'm going to do with that 100%, but that's going to help me determine what are the different DCs necessary for the monster. The idea eventually will be that you will have, in my brain, what you'll have is you'll have something like this, where it'll be, let me come over here real quick. It'll say tier 1, tier 1, and then underneath it'll be, this will be like the quick table. There'll be a quick table where it's like tier 1, and you might have striker, lurker, brute, what are some other ones? Controller, leader. These are terms from 4E if you're not familiar with 4E. Soldier. And then over here it might be like TN, BN, DN, and then hit points or total hit value. And then in here it'll have numbers, right? And so you'll be able to quickly say, you know what? I want a tier 1 striker. And it'll just say, do this. That's a great way. And maybe it'll have like 2 variations of each of these or 3 variations of each of these, right? So you can say, I'd like a tier 1 striker. Here are the 4 different types. These are different arrays of target DCs and hit points. Perfect. Now I got an idea. And you might have like minion. Technically, any one of these can be a minion, but you just change its total hit value to 1, right? So there's that part. There's also initiative DC. I've been trying to think about this in terms of initiative DC as well. And I think that there's a lot of games that what they do is it's either you're before the monster or after the monster, and that's pretty much it. And so it's up to the players to make a reflex check, because they're going to have a reflex saving throw. They make a reflex check, and in essence, the monster has a reflex DC. If they get higher than it, they go before that monster. If they get lower, they go below that monster. And so it'd be very easy to just have you write out your monsters, their initiative DCs, and then whatever the player rolls, they just go in between or above or below wherever they succeeded, right? Simple as that. Then you have these tags. We talked about this before in a brief video, where you would have things like, I put a lot of random things on here, but like fear, protection, swarming. You'd have other random things like, you know, evasive, damage shield. I think of like Keyforge keywords can go on here. Elusive versus evasive versus all these kind of things. Sneaky, I don't know. You have all these different tags, and those tags are associated to power types, right? They're associated to different types of quick abilities or quick features that the monster might have. And this might be a table, and maybe you roll on it 2 to 3 times, depending on the type of monster, like how challenging or how interesting you want that monster to be. You roll on it twice, you see what tags are there, you throw them on the monster. Now that monster has those abilities. Obviously, we already talked about these 4 attributes. T, total hit value. Then you have type. You roll on a table. Is it a type? Is it a minion, a common, or boss? And that's going to determine sort of how many hits it takes and what powers might affect it. Technically, the total hit value doesn't matter if it's a boss or common or minion. It's more how it reacts to different powers, because there are certain powers that automatically kill minions and automatically hit commons, but bosses are just, you've got to fight them straight up, right? You don't have epic powers that do stuff. I already talked about this, where you're rolling these sort of basic arrays for these basic monsters on different levels. Like it's already there, so you can quickly say, you know what, I'm going to be a striker, and it's got all that stuff. A potential defenses table, where it's like, you know, maybe it's normal, maybe it's got nothing, or maybe it has, I thought this was interesting, maybe it has a higher target number depending on the roll dice that's being rolled. Maybe it has pseudo immunities, right? And it'll have that on the monster sheet, where it'll say the target number is 3, but if you're using your defender dice, it's a 5, meaning that it hits easier, right? Or maybe it's controller die. If you're rolling controller dice, it's a 6, meaning it's not as easy to push around or use mental powers against, etc. Right? So I thought that might be really cool in terms of having special defenses. Once again, you roll a table, simple as that. Resistances or vulnerabilities. We talked about that earlier, where you could have things like how do you deal with potential resistance or vulnerabilities from damage types. And so that might be fun to have another table that kind of talks about that. Potential powers. You know, I kind of think of this powers and tags. So tags are monster powers. They're quick powers. They're quick abilities. Extra attack, fear, you know, they're huge, they're a veteran, etc. Powers might be, maybe you roll a table to give them one of the player powers. Maybe he has Shield Rush, which is a specific player power. I think that adding some of those player powers on are really cool. And then there'll be a tactics to maybe you figure out how it plays. I think that's more, every monster is going to have that kind of built in. So this is a general idea of how we might be able to create tables so we can randomize these monsters. The only thing it doesn't have on here is that action-oriented monster, meaning we talked about in the monster creation video, if you go back, that maybe there are specific actions that trigger at specific times in combat. Now, those might be able to be put in here, maybe under the tag section, or maybe they're under the powers. Or maybe those aren't in these quick tables, because these quick tables are supposed to be, how do I just put a monster together really quickly? And maybe those are more assigned to the specifically created monsters in the Monstrous Manual. And maybe here there's some guidelines to help you understand how to maybe build those out. So that's the beginning of our Monstrous Manual quick tables chart. Mainly this started from me trying to create DCs to figure out what the hell my DCs are going to be now that we have these advantage dice. So let me know what you think. Hit the subscribe button, hit the bell, leave some comments. Love to know what's going on. See you guys.